Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all: family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi Project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives. Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today we have Liz Benditt with us, who is a master entrepreneur and a mom and a wife, which is what our podcast listeners love to see. We love to see the well-balanced entrepreneur who is thriving, right? So Liz not only has survived cancer 5 times in the past 15 years, but she has found a way to support other people in the community and come up with her own business for that. Her business is called the Balm Box, and she will go ahead and let us know what all that is about. And first of all, please, Liz, introduce yourself and tell us your story. How did you even come up with this awesome business idea? And you were like, all right, we're doing this, we're going for it.
Sure. Well, thank you for such a nice welcome. Let's see. So, if you go back, I've been a working mom and cancer patient for many, many years. My very first cancer, I think any working mom, you sometimes, you age things by your children. So my first cancer, my children were babies. I'm trying to think. They were 1 and 3, and then my last cancer was last year, and they're in high school. My daughter, in fact, is graduating this month. So it's really something that my family has. It's just part of our family life. Is sometimes mom gets really sick, and then she gets better, and you just roll with it. And I think
Wow.
that there's been, in some ways, a lot of really good that has come from that. I think that as a result, my kids have learned to be more resilient. I think that they are kinder, they're more generous. When someone's having a bad day, whether it's a friend or even a teacher, the first thing they think of is, I wonder what's happening behind the scenes that I can't see, because they've experienced that. And while certainly I wouldn't wish upon anybody this kind of experience, on the same hand, it did provide, right? Like it's a wonderful characteristic that they have now, that is taking them into their adult lives. So I do love that. But yeah, the idea for the Balm Box came really back in 2017. I was undergoing radiation treatment for my first breast cancer, and radiation is one of those weird cancer issues where it takes a long time. For me, I want to say 7 or 8 weeks of radiation treatment, but it's not as long as chemo, and certainly it's not as horrible as chemo. But it's still horrible. It's just less horrible. And because it's less horrible, I feel like it doesn't get its due. And so I was going through radiation, and I needed all of these things. I needed things like, a ice pack that wouldn't sweat through my clothes, and I needed all sorts of burn bombs. I was burning like crazy. You can't see me on a podcast, but I'm very fair skinned. My skin did not just turn red, it turned purple, and then chunks of it fell off. It was absolutely awful, and I still needed some kind of bra situation. I'm well endowed, and rocking on no bra list was just not an option. So I just needed all these things, and friends and family want to help, and what they mostly help with is flowers and food. So I have a fridge full of lasagnas, and I'm still up until 4 in the morning looking for an aluminum-free deodorant that in fact prevents sweat stains. Like, it's just needs this functional stuff, and I kept thinking,
Or
why can't gifting be functional? And it really wasn't until the pandemic hit in spring of 2020 that I had a minute to really think about what this business would be. And back in 2017, the idea was radiation relief, and then over time it evolved into, well, why not provide functional gifts for all forms of cancer treatments? Why just radiation? Everything sucks, surgery sucks, and chemo sucks, and all of these things are terrible. And doctors want to help you with them, but really all they can do is write a prescription. And there's plenty of non-prescription things that you can do to help
for
reduce pain and
comfort.
suffering. Yeah, that are comforting.
a follow-up question. Can you tell us what type of products you have on your website or on your business? So we talked
Yeah, so if you go back to that fall of 2020, I had a bunch of ideas for what that product line would be. But because, as you'd mentioned, I have a 25-year career in marketing, my first question was, is it just me? Am I the jerk that doesn't want, my Tata's tried to kill me t-shirt and would rather have ice packs? Maybe other people really want this stuff and it's just, and I'm just unique. And so I wrote a survey, and because it was the stay-at-home orders during the pandemic, I sent it to everyone I knew, and everyone was at home and bored and looking for something to do. And the survey went viral. It was amazing and collected almost 600 responses, which is amazing with no incentive, and it was super long.
wow.
It took like 30 or 40 minutes to complete. So it was like this moment in time, right, where you could get people that were looking for something to do and they were bored, and a 45-minute survey was awesome, right? You can't do
Yeah.
that these days. And so the survey went down two paths. And the first path, you ask if you've ever gone through cancer treatment, and it asked you a series of questions about your experience, and then on a scale of 1 to 5 to rate various items that you might want to buy for yourself or receive as a gift. And then if you had not had cancer, it asked if you'd previously bought a gift for a cancer patient. And what's absolutely amazing to me, there were so many things I learned in this survey, but when you ask cancer patients, what are some things that you'd like to receive? The top performing items were all functional. It's not just me. So the things that people wanted were things like fleece blankets and ice packs and lip balm and lotion and essential oils, which was something I hadn't really heard ever used before. And then when you ask people that had not had cancer, it was almost 80% had made a purchase in the past year and a half for a cancer patient, and what they mostly bought was flowers and food. And I thought, wow, there's this real disconnect here between what people
Wow.
want and need and what people are buying, and that's a business model.
There you go.
I constantly refer back to that survey even now 4 years later to look at, okay, as a guidepost, what are some things that we learned in that survey and as we evolve and change. So yeah, the items that you can find, and we've gone through a fair amount of trial and error. So, you talk to lots of entrepreneurs, and if I go back to October of 2020, we started with what I thought was the right idea, which was subscription boxes. So this idea that you would have a radiation subscription box and a chemo subscription box. And at the time, I really thought that we were going to be selling directly to cancer patients themselves. And like 80% of our sales were gifts. And so we switched up the business model the following year, and then have done a fair amount of testing to get to the right, what they call product market fit. And one of the things that I learned is that when people are buying gifts for people going through treatment, they don't really know if you're experiencing neuropathy or nausea or dry skin. What they really want is just to buy you a radiation box, or right, buy you a chemo box with like a
Yes.
little bit of everything in it. And so I got rid of like the side effect specific boxes and really have focused more on the treatment boxes, with this concept of being able to buy like just a chemo care box, and it's either a small, medium, or large. But we rebrand those to be essentials, comprehensive, and tremendous, so that when you're receiving the gift, you don't know, like essentials, comprehensive, and tremendous, you don't really know which one of those means small, medium, large. And so it just, I don't know, I think it's nicer to not know that someone bought you this small box. I don't know.
Yes, just how we interpret it. But
Yeah.
let's unpack that a little bit. So I know to you that sounds like, second nature talking about all those marketing. But for our entrepreneurs out there who are not such experts in marketing, I want to unpack everything you've mentioned.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you at least mentioned like three things, three specific skills or tactics you did for marketing
Yes.
from
Yes.
starting to this point. So can you talk a little bit about more about the survey? So why did you choose to do
Yeah.
the survey in the first place? And then after the survey, you basically did what you thought the survey was telling you, but after that, I'm guessing you analyzed your customers, you had some sort of data. So can you break it down a little bit for our
Yeah.
entrepreneurs so they can
Sure, sure.
learn
And
from
yeah, I take it for
them?
granted. My career in marketing has been I'm a data-driven marketer. So while I love and I can appreciate, all the Super Bowl ads and all the fun creatives, I'm like a total data junkie, to the point where sometimes I just need to make a judgment call or a decision, and I'm like, where's the information? Sometimes you don't have it. It's imperfect. But so if I go back to the survey, yes, the survey had paths. So if you had said that you're a previous cancer patient, the survey would offer you a different set of questions than if you had not had cancer before. And so that's to capture all the feedback from people that had previously had cancer, people that have bought gifts for cancer patients. And then if you had neither bought a gift for a cancer patient or had cancer yourself, it was like, have a nice day, see ya. Like it just, I don't want your feedback. And so I
Yeah.
think that's one of those things that it's really hard as an entrepreneur is screening out, right? People that are not your target market,
Yes,
and just kind of
definitely.
filing them away. And I was surprised. There were so many surprises from that survey, but one of the biggest surprises to me was how few people we screened out, right? So that was one of the big aha learnings. Like I assumed that we would screen out a lot of people, but it turns out that buying gifts for cancer patients is in fact very, very common. And
Wow.
so that was one of my big learnings. Um, I I didn't do a ton of analytics on specifically what kind of cancer or the age or demographics, right, of people that had previously had cancer. I really looked at them as a whole. Honestly, because I didn't have enough people in any of those subgroups to look at their responses in a way that I think would be statistically valid. So one of the things that I learned in my previous life and career is that you need roughly 100 responses, um, or 100 respondents to get to any kind of data that you want to act on. So if you have a subset of that group, if I'm looking at women under 40 that had previously had breast cancer, well now of those hundreds of people, now I'm looking at 20. I don't really want to make business decisions
Not a
based on
big
20
enough
people's
pool.
feedback, right? I want it to be a broader cross section. So does that help in terms of answering
Yes,
like that question with the
definitely.
survey?
Yes, definitely. So for the survey, so after that, once you got started, you mentioned that you had to kind of switch gears about who you were marketing your website to, because you
Yeah,
realized your
yeah,
your customers were more of the people who want to buy the gifts versus the actual cancer patients.
yeah.
So how was that aha moment, and what did you do about it, or how did you even catch that? Because I know a lot of people don't go back and analyze. They're the creator, they're the
Yeah.
entrepreneur, but they're not the marketing specialist or the analytics
Yeah, I suppose
specialist.
that's true. My background has really helped me a lot. So a couple of things. The first is when I first was doing the product development, I was looking at, okay, here are all the items that got rated very highly for radiation. How am I going to sort them into your week one box, your week two box, your week three box? And then as I was doing that, I thought, well, on the off chance that someone wants to buy a gift, why don't I repackage these same individual components into single purchase gift baskets? So there was the subscription, which in my mind was always going to be something someone would buy for themselves. And the individual box was logically something that someone would buy as a gift, right? And the way that I would know that something was a gift were two different ways. One, if there was a gift message, right? So that's a sure sign. If someone's saying, dear Liz, hope you feel better soon, love Aunt Adele, that is going to be very logically a gift. But there were other ways too. So when I saw that a product had a different shipping and billing address and a different shipping and billing name and address, that's a pretty surefire sign that it's a gift. Again, it's not a guarantee. I could, buy. I get my billing address could be my business and my shipping address could be my home, right? So there's a lot of different reasons that might not be. But when it's a totally different name and state, and when you're seeing those orders come in, it's pretty logical, right? That
Yes.
that's a gift.
And no data is
Um,
going to be
yeah,
100% accurate. There's always going to be a little bit of room for
totally.
human error too, and
Yeah.
system error. So,
So when after the first year, when over 80% of our sales either had a gift message or the shipping and billing address were different, that was a sign. And we're a discrete single product box versus the subscription. It was just a sign, and the subscription product really just did not sell well. Spending more time and energy perfecting it didn't make sense when obviously we had this focus on caregivers. And I will say that first year, when I was writing blog posts and doing social media posts and messaging, all of the messaging was targeting or at least trying to speak directly to cancer patients. So when you are going through radiation, you might want blah, blah,
I
blah.
see.
As opposed to then switching gears and saying, okay, our target audience really are caregivers or friends and family. So then it's just a subtle edit. When your friend or family, when a third party cancer patient is going through radiation, they might want and need this, and here's a great product, right? So it's just changing up really, really subtle edits. And then I got further into it, thinking about, okay, what are ways that you can help caregivers, what are helpful tips for caregivers? So it's beyond just what we sell. What are some ways to help caregivers? So I wrote a blog post on, here are, if you've got writer's block, here are 7 different
Oh,
gift
that's
notes to add to your
amazing.
message, right? Or, hey, how to support a friend going through hair loss, through chemo-induced hair loss. So beyond buying them a Balm Box, which obviously that's step one, but there are other things you can do to help people that are non-specific. And I mean, and everything came from a combination of feedback I got from customers, talking to various customers, and then certainly my own experience. Like when I was diagnosed with a second breast cancer in late 2022. I had a single mastectomy in March of 23 and a deep flap reconstruction, which is bananas. They take your lower belly, and they fashion it into a boob.
Oh
Very,
my
very cool.
gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
so I have a
is very
flat
cool. I
stomach.
love that medicine and technology has been
It's
advancing and
amazing.
advancing enough where, there's
Yes.
really an answer for a lot of our
The
problems.
one win in all of this is my flat stomach, which, trust me, was
You
not
are
flat
so
beforehand.
positive, and I love that so much. And I know in order to be successful, and definitely in the entrepreneurial world, you do have to take whatever
You
problems
gotta
come your way
take the
and
wins,
spin
right?
it, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
take the win.
I was gonna say that, when I went through all of my surgeries, I realized like how annoying and difficult it was to live with a 5 pound weight restriction. Like it's so dumb. But like I couldn't, like carrying a stupid, like I was kicking a laundry basket on the floor to get it from my bedroom to the lawn, and it was so dumb. I mean, if there are any number of friends that would have been happy to come over to throw my laundry in the wash for me, so it's just really little things that are super helpful. So I try to now focus our social media and our blog content, right, on caregivers as opposed to patients themselves.
And honestly, thank you so much for sharing that. That is amazing of what you did, how you paid attention and you shifted gear, like even slightly, like you said, even just editing your blogs and posts and all of that slightly to a different audience. Because technically, your target market ended up being not a whole other group, but
It
definitely.
really was. It's very different when you're talking to caregivers versus patients directly. Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, and and kind of paying attention to that and analyzing that and changing gears, you're able to keep your business and grow it and make it successful compared to maybe if you didn't look at that aspect of it and your boxes weren't going to be selling because you kept on pushing it towards cancer patients, but they're busy, like they have a lot going on in their lives, so they're probably not searching for a specific gift box for themselves, for example. So it's amazing that you're able to target that and then we're like, okay, this is what we need to do. And your marketing expertise, I'm sure, will 100%
Yeah.
help. So what advice would you give to our entrepreneurs that don't have a marketing background? What would be your like number one thing if they kind of hit a wall in their business and they're like, I don't know what's the next step, something's not working.
I think it was, I was, so I mean, I have lots of advice and they're from different places. So the first thing I will mention is I think one of the keys to my success has been that I did not entirely quit my day job. So I still teach undergraduate marketing classes at the University of Kansas School of Business. It was amazing. At the exact same time that I had planned on quitting my full time job, my husband and I had been saving money. We'd been thinking about it. We had put away enough money to kind of carry us for 2 years while I got the Bomb Box started. And then almost exactly at the time when I was ready to leave, my corporate job, I had the opportunity to teach classes. Yes, I was asked to teach a class at University of Kansas School of Business, and that has been a phenomenal part-time job that's given me a little air cover in terms of financial security. So don't get me wrong, I earned a whole lot more money as a corporate marketing executive than I do as an adjunct professor. But
Sure.
it's I have a little bit of salary, and should, my husband works for a big Fortune 500 company. Should he ever get laid off, I have access to healthcare, which, for someone like me is just, I cannot be without health insurance. Like
Of
that's just not a
course.
thing. And so I think what my first and foremost is by having, not quitting my day job, by having just a small source of income, that gave me a lot more time and space to test things. And so I wasn't rushing through any test. If I didn't have enough data, I could wait an extra 4 to 6 weeks for data to come in before I actually made a business decision. And had I instead only had that 2 years of runway versus four, I would have had to condense a lot of that learning into a shorter period of time, and the quality of that learning would have been less. So, to the extent that it's possible, and it's not always, but to the extent that it's possible, I think that one of the really big keys to my success has been that I have a second source of income.
That's great. Yeah, it's just the security you need to not worry so you can put your creative energy forward instead of just worrying about having something.
And
It's
well,
not
it's not just the
in the
worrying, it's
beginning.
also rushing. Like there have been a lot of things that I am curious about, and so I set a test up, but then you have to let the test run until you get, like I said, those 100 respondents in order to actually make a business decision. So, for example, different we've been testing different offers on our website. So, as an incentive to give us your email address, like everyone else, we want to give you a small discount in exchange for your email address, and so that we can continue to communicate with you and develop a relationship with you. But of course, as any business knows, how small can that gift be and still get the same result? Does $15 off work as well as 15% off? And can I put, how about $15 off your purchase of $50 or more, or $60 or more, right? So putting kind of those various hurdles in place, but you have to have a certain number of responses before that data becomes reliable. And so taking the time, and getting enough data on all those different coupon offers in the end has been a huge savings because we can adjust our offers to be what's going to be the most effective and financially solvent, viable.
Of course, of course. Now, going back to some questions to get to know you as Liz better, because I love to get to know my guests. So, if there was one thing you can change in the world with a magic wand, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I would make a cure for cancer, right?
Awesome, awesome, of course. Now,
I mean, that would put me out of business, but that would be in the best possible way. It's all good.
well, then you can find a way to pivot your business to
I
market
would.
to something else, right?
Yeah.
So my next question is, I mean, I'm sure fighting cancer 5 times is one of your biggest challenges, and every time is probably different. But I always like to ask, maybe it's something different in your opinion, in your personal or business life. What has been your biggest challenge by far, and what did you do to overcome it? If it was like one thing.
I would say that back in, I'm trying to do the math. It was around 2012. I That was when I had my thyroid cancer. And my thyroid cancer, I ended up in this very, very teeny tiny subgroup. It happens to 2% of patients. It's super rare side effect where I became what's called hypoparathyroid, which just means I won't go into the medical side of it. It was very, very difficult. I gained a lot of weight. I was really sluggish. I had terrible fatigue. And I complained about all of this to my endocrinologist at the time, and he blew me off. He said, "You're a working mom. Working moms are always tired." And I thought, this is not right. I'm complaining to you like something is wrong, and you're ignoring me. And so I took it upon myself to find a different endocrinologist. I visited with this crazy lady who's ran a med spa, but she also was an MD, and she looked at my endocrine labs and saw some opportunities to adjust my nutrition. She put me on a different exercise regimen, and the combination of all of the holistic things that the crazy lady recommended, as well as a new endocrinologist, and listening to me and adjusting, my various medications, um, made this enormous difference. I dropped the weight, I felt better, I had more energy.
Wow.
Um, I had just started doing jogging with some girlfriends, and we decided that we were gonna start distance running. And a year later, I ran a half marathon, and
Wow,
I'm really,
congratulations. That's
really,
a huge
thank you.
accomplishment.
I'm really proud of that. And I think that it was this big aha moment for me as just a cancer patient to learn that there I by no means would I ever recommend somebody ignore Western medicine, right? So I'm not by any I'm stretching the imagination suggesting that you cure your cancer with a coffee enema or something bananas. But I do think that the combination, right, of nutrition and vitamins and exercise and Western medicine is a really terrific combination in terms of regaining your health. And you have to take control, that you cannot just rely on your medical team to make decisions for you. As a patient, you have to be the one in charge. And that was a big aha moment for me that year.
Wow, yes. And honestly, I would like to emphasize on that. I'm a huge believer in nutrition and fitness and meditation to stay healthy and stay, at our best mentally and physically and health wise. So, please, to our listeners, if you feel anything that's off in your body, get the help, medical and holistic, or try to find what works for you. But listen to your body. I think that's a great message. Our bodies knows when something's off.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm surprised that was your answer. You're more challenging because I could see that for somebody who's such a strong person. It's like not having somebody give you the correct direction and ignore you. That's worse than going through radiation, and I'm sure a lot of other things you went through.
Well, and it happened beforehand. So in some ways it was a gift, right? Because it happened before I went through. That was my second cancer, and at that point, I don't know. Every cancer, you learn something new about yourself, your body, the process, the cancer community, the cancer, the holistic oncology practice. I mean, all of those things, you learn and grow. And I don't know, like I think if you don't learn from the experience, what's the point? So,
Yeah, well, definitely. I think anytime we go through challenges, we have two choices. We can either sit down and break down and everything's over, or we can just fight, right? And move forward and see what we can do about it. So I think there's mainly two main ways of handling anything horrible that's going on in our lives or in our businesses.
it's true. And I really like to also be kind to myself, like give myself a minute of rage, right? Give myself just, everyone needs a moment to just be mad at the world and angry and upset. Like, I think honoring that and gives you a minute to honor it, acknowledge it, and then set it aside and move forward versus just ignoring it. I think that's probably also unhealthy. So, and I cannot stress enough how lucky I am. I have an amazing support network. Every time I've been diagnosed with cancer, my friend Stacy brings over Jello shots. And
Oh,
it's
that's
now
awesome.
it's a
It's very
tradition.
important to have a good support system and your family
Yes,
too, I'm sure.
absolutely.
Now, given everything, again, just the first thing that comes to mind, what does a happy and fulfilled life look like to you today? And has it changed from your 20s?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. In my 20s, my day was determined in the morning. I would get on the scale, and if it was at or under a certain number, that established whether it was a good or bad day. So that was deeply unhealthy. I've grown since then. Um, or whether, a certain person had called. This is pre-text, that's how old I am. So I had called or followed up, or I had a date coming up. So yeah, I was much more self-absorbed in my 20s. I think a happier life now is, and I'm really grateful. I have an incredible family. I have a wonderful husband. We've been married over 20 years. My kids are teenagers, and they're so smart and kind and self-sufficient. So having days that I get to balance um, my business, right? So being able to work on a business that I'm so proud of and is generating income and is growing like crazy. All of those things bring me enormous amount of pride. And then beyond that, there's all of the emotional side. I see all of the gift notes that people write, and I get so many messages from patients and from caregivers that just make me so proud of what we're doing at Balm Box and how we're touching the cancer community. And then I also, part of that fulfillment is being able to sneak out at 4 o'clock to go watch my son's tennis match, and then run back to the office if I need to, or just come home and make dinner because I'm responsible or accountable to no one but myself. So if all the orders are out and I don't need to be in the office and I can sneak out at 4 o'clock, there's no sneaking, right? Like it's just me, and I love that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, and just
So
having
that,
really the
yeah.
balance to do what needs to get done, but having the freedom to attend to your personal life. I'm very interested in business names because that's almost like your brand and the whole thought process of why it took you there. And a lot of entrepreneurs have a hard time committing to a business name. So your business is called the Balm Box, and your website is thebombbox.com. Can you kind of go over that thought process of how you landed on that name and what was making that decision like?
Uh, yeah. Okay. Well, my background is in marketing and advertising, and I spent almost 6 years as an account director at a local ad agency called Barkley. And one of the core things that we would use for any business, anytime that you were developing anything creative, is something called a creative brief. I don't know if you've heard of that before. You can Google
No.
it.
So
There's
can you
there's
go over it?
8 million examples online of creative briefs, but basically it forces you to think through, who am I talking to? What is my objective? What am I trying to say? Um, what do I stand for? How would I describe my business, my brand, right? And kind of going through and thinking through that process. And so I developed for myself a creative brief to try to clarify, what is it that I'm trying to say? Who am I speaking to? And um, what are our brand values? And in doing all of that, I came up with a list of probably 20 or 25 different possible names. And then again, this
Wow.
is during the pandemic. And I have five really close girlfriends that are my part of my running group. And so I was texting them various names and getting their feedback, there's a lot of upvotes and downvotes. And so I definitely used their feedback. And then it became down to, there were probably four or five possible names, and it came down to what URLs were available to buy
Oh, I
or
see.
to reserve. And so there was one other name that I really liked at the time, and now in retrospect, I'm so glad we don't have. But I liked the idea of the butterfly box, like this idea of like butterflies being stronger than you think, and the kind of
Oh,
reformation,
I
and like I
see.
liked the idea of it. But it doesn't matter because the URL at the time wasn't available, which took me to Bombbox. And then that was the other element. Like, I don't remember, balmbox.com might have been a URL issue, so I changed it to the Bombbox. I don't remember. This is so long ago.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it was an iterative process, but it did start with a creative brief.
Okay, perfect. Again, thank you so much for sharing that. And we are running a little bit short on time, so I'll ask you our closing questions. Now, I always love to pick my entrepreneurs' brains of, if you can kind of do it all over again, what would you change? Now, given that everything we learn and we grow, that's understandable. So some people would say, "Oh, I wouldn't change anything because I've grown from it." But if you can be more efficient or in any way, what have you learned that you would advise your younger self to do better if you were to do it all over again? Starting a company, a brand.
I probably would tell myself to lower my expectations. That first year I was expecting to make $1 million and I didn't. So I
I
do think, yeah, I think that managing your expectations is probably learning to manage my
Yes, it's
expectations better. I
true.
think I've gotten a lot better at that, but I had some very unrealistic expectations that first year.
Oh, yes. I think most entrepreneurs do that. We get overexcited about things and we're so sure. And when something doesn't go as crazy well as we assume, then it's really a kick in the ego because, entrepreneurs put a lot of work into their babies, which are their
Absolutely.
businesses.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any last words of encouragement to our listeners?
I'm so grateful, right, that I've had this opportunity. I think that there's a lot to be said for um, a second career, right? My first career was in marketing, my second career is in entrepreneurship. And there's never a wrong time, I think, to invest in yourself. And I'm just really, really grateful that I had I'm so fortunate, right? That, and I don't take for granted how fortunate I am that, my family has been behind me and been so proud and been so gracious. I've changed our finances materially,
Of course.
making less money than I did 4 years ago, but couldn't be happier. So I think all in all, it was a good trade. And to have the kind of support that I get from my husband and kids who maybe don't have the same spending power that they did when I was working in corporate America, but see all the benefits.
Of course, the fulfillment of it and the quality of life that you get now. And at the end of the day, not any amount of money is literally going to buy happiness. And as long
No,
as you can have a lifestyle that you're happy with, I think I would always trade money for feeling more fulfilled in my
so
day-to-day life.
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that because I know a lot of people always do want to focus on making more and more and more money and they think that's going to give them a better life, especially, younger entrepreneurs who haven't fully made a lot of money just yet. They think that's
Yeah.
going to solve their problems. But again, thank you so much, Liz, for your time and your expertise and all my best to you. Before we close, can you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can connect with you and your business?
Yes, yes. Visit thebalmbox.com. That's TheBalmBox.com. You can find us on Instagram at BombboxIG or Facebook at the Balm Box.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again for your time. And until next time, and thank you to our listeners for always tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.